Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alana, and today I'm going to be telling you my 10 favorite books that helped me improve my mental health. Also, I'm sorry in advance for the wind and the water noises, but it's too pretty here to not film, okay? I'm going to be dividing this video into 4 sections: general books that I think would help absolutely anybody, and then books that helped me with my anxiety, depression, and trauma. Now, even if you don't think you have any trauma, I would recommend staying until the end of this video to get those recommendations, because I think these books can help absolutely anybody. But beginning with the general books, first one is Breath by James Nestor. And this book really looks at how we breathe wrong and how we can better use our breath to help regulate our heart rate variability as well as our nervous system. And I dive a lot into how you can use the breath to influence your nervous system in my Mind on Yoga course, which you can learn more about in the link in the description. But it's yoga classes, breathwork, meditations, and factual sit-down talking videos just like this one that help explain how you can use yoga, both yoga asana as well as yoga philosophy and yoga breathwork, pranayama exercises, to better your mental health. And that course is really inspired by a lot of these books in this video, so if you enjoy any of these books, be sure to also check out the course as we dive a little bit deeper into all of this material. And if you've read any of these books already, be sure to leave me a comment down below. Let me know, what did you think of the book? What did you learn from it? And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below. But the next book in my general section, I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of, and it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he makes it very clear how you can label your habits, identify which ones are good for you and which ones maybe aren't serving you, and then how to implement better habits into your life through different techniques. The main one that I remember is habit stacking, and he talks about how you can use habits that already exist in your life that are good, you want to keep them, and stacking another habit that you want to start with that habit, and that kind of helps build consistency. And I think a lot of times people are just unaware of their habits, and so this book is also really good for helping you become aware of your habits, because a lot of our problems can often be caused by habitual activity, not really conscious activity. And so by becoming more self-aware, you can then improve your habits and then improve your mental state. Next book in the general section is Total Meditation by Deepak Chopra. And this book is really good at detailing not only how to meditate, but how to take what you learn in meditation and that mindfulness state of mind and how to use that in your entire life. So it's making your life a total meditation. And he really emphasizes how meditation doesn't have to be just sitting in one spot in silence alone for however long. It can be just a state that you live in. And I think that I totally agree with that, and I think it's really powerful to learn about that. And that book is really what helped me deepen my meditation practice and kind of understand the why behind meditation. So I highly recommend that book. Next, I'm going to dive into the anxiety books. So these are books that really helped me when I was struggling with anxiety. I think anxiety is the thing that really forced me to step outside of my comfort zone and start looking into, how do I change this? I don't like feeling like this. How do I change this? And the first book that really helped me was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This is another pretty popular book, but the way that he writes this book is answers to questions that his patients have had. And so that's a really interesting perspective to read from, because you read the question of the patient and you're like, oh yeah, I totally relate to that. And then you get to read his answer to that specific question and it's like, oh. And the whole book is really just focusing on finding the power in the now, the present moment, and really showing you that, different things like depression are caused by being stuck in the past, and anxiety is being stuck in the future. And by learning to harness the power of now, you can let go of a lot of those negative emotions. And I think that book was really influential to opening my mind to that even being possible, because before that I kind of just thought, I am anxious. That's just who I am. I'm not going to change that. But then reading that book, I was like, wait a second. I can change that. And then I started diving into more books, like another one of Eckhart Tolle's books, which is A New Earth. And in this book, he's not so much looking at the individual, but he's looking at the collective and being like, okay, how can we get everybody to this level of acknowledging the power of now? So I think those two books are really good to read together. And then the last book that really helped me with my anxiety was A Highly Sensitive Person, written by Elaine Aron. And this is an older book. I think it was written the same year that I was born. But the way that she talks about being triggered by loud noises or overstimulated by bright lights, and acknowledging that some people are more sensitive than other people. And that doesn't make you an anxious freak. That just makes you a highly sensitive person. And once you can identify with that and understand that I'm not crazy, I'm just sensitive to the world around me, and that's not a negative thing, that's a powerful thing, because having sensitivity to your environment makes you more aware and makes you more engaged in the present moment. And I think that that book was really beautiful in demonstrating that I don't have to identify with being anxious as a bad thing or identify with being sensitive as a bad thing. Like, it can be a good thing. So if you're someone who struggles with being highly sensitive, I highly recommend that book. Then moving into the depression category, there are two kind of similar books. One is Lost Connections by Johann Hari, I think is how you say his name. And this book is really good at detailing how and what are the causes of depression, like on a neurological level. And also looking at how depression can be caused by different environmental factors. And then he dives into, okay, how do you change that? How do you holistically take your mental health into your own hands, and what can you do about this depression? How can you identify the root cause, and then how can you come up with a solution? And that, I read that book when I was in one of my low points. Depression isn't something that I struggled with constantly, but it was like an ups and downs type of thing, versus anxiety was just like constant. But that book really helped me come out of that low point. And then another book, I really like the author. I read one of his other books, The Righteous Mind, for one of my college classes, but he also wrote The Happiness Hypothesis. His name is Jonathan Haidt. In this book, he doesn't so much as focus on the causes of depression, like Lost Connections, but he focuses on, like, okay, well, what makes us happy? If we don't want to feel like this, what can we do to make ourselves feel better? And I just really love his writing, so I highly recommend checking out that book. And if you're interested in like religious studies and political ideologies and like why are people so different on a personality psychology level, highly recommend The Righteous Mind, but that has nothing to do with mental health. Unless you have issues with family members around politics, then it could help your mental health. But anyways, moving on to the trauma section of books. Number one, I think absolutely everybody should have to read this book, like in school. And it's called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, I think is how you say his name. All of these books will be linked down in the description, by the way. But in this book, he's talking about his research on PTSD patients, of war PTSD, sexual assault PTSD, and it's a really heavy book, don't get me wrong. But the way that he looks at trauma and how you have to find the root cause of something in order to be able to resolve it, and how a lot of times our behaviors are unconscious. Maybe we don't think we have trauma. Maybe we think, oh, like my childhood wasn't that bad, like I'm not traumatized. But there are still things that could have happened to us that affect our habitual behaviors that maybe we're not even aware of. And so if we look at those behaviors and be like, well, what's causing that? And then dive to the root, that's when you can really find healing in trauma and start to move forward from there. And so the writer of this book was actually on the forefront of getting PTSD on the DSM-5 diagnosis after the Vietnam War. And it's so interesting to learn that like people not that long ago did not think that trauma could have physical manifestations, but it so can. And I love everything about this book. I'm listening to it again while I'm here camping, and while it's a really heavy subject matter, it is really important. And I think if everybody knew how to look at the root cause instead of just finding band-aids all the time, like drugs and alcohol and bad behaviors and even medications that are prescribed to you, like that is just a band-aid. And if you don't dive deeper along with those band-aids maybe, or get rid of the band-aids altogether if they're bad for you, but if you don't look at the root cause, the band-aids aren't going to fix anything. So I think that book is really beneficial. And the last book in the group of 10 that I have recommendations for is How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. And you also might know her as the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. But in this book, she talks about her personal story with how she not only discovered her trauma, but then how she worked through it and how she did it in a holistic way. And I really admire that about her. But then she also really guides the reader in, okay, how do you do the work now? How do you recognize your patterns? How do you change? And that was a really good book to listen to. Make sure you have a notebook nearby when you're reading that book, because she does give a lot of like exercises to do. And then 2 little bonuses. I know I gave 1 bonus earlier, but 2 more bonuses to go under the trauma section. These are personal accounts with people who experienced deep trauma and how they worked through it and what they made out of that bad experience. So the first one is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he not only talks about his mental strength and like what he had to do to be able to live through the Holocaust, but he also then talks about his logotherapy that he went on to create after he was released. And it's just really awesome to see how someone can go through something so traumatic and then get out on the other side, have his total, complete life turned upside down. Nothing's the same as when he went into that concentration camp. But then he's still able to want to help others and like create this logotherapy to help others who have experienced things like him. And I think that is really powerful. So I love, 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 love that book. And the last book is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. So a lot of people know Trevor Noah from his late night show, and he's hilarious, love him. But to learn about his history growing up in South Africa during apartheid, which really wasn't that long ago, which is crazy to think about because I certainly didn't learn about this in school. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please read this book. But he talks about how growing up in a society where he's mixed and everybody's segregated and like how that affected him mentally, and then how he went on to become what he is today, this like famous American late night show host. And that's another inspiring story of seeing how someone can go from such a traumatic, bad experience to then still making the most of life. And it's also just a really wholesome book if you listen to it on Audible because it's read by Trevor Noah. And so instead of hearing him on late night TV show host mode, you get to like actually hear his voice telling his story, and I think that's really cool. So anyways, I hope you come away from this video with a few books on your Audible wish list. I really wish that Audible would like sponsor a video. That would be cool. But anyways, subscribe to this channel down below if you haven't already, because that really helps me out. And remember, leave me a comment if you do read one of these books. Let me know what you think and what you learn. And I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye guys.